Hi, it's Joanna Oakey here and welcome back to the Deal Room Podcast, a podcast brought to you by the commercial legal practice Aspect Legal. Today we have another quick tips session. Our quick tips sessions are all about giving you the high-level areas of information that you need to know in relation to a particular area in the shortest possible time.
Ladies and gentlemen,
good evening.
Are you ready?
Okay, here we go.
You're listening to the Deal Room Podcast. Join us as we bring you the inside scoop on business sales and acquisitions. Get across trends in the area and hear the industry's best recount their real-life tips, traps, and experiences. Now, here's your host, Joanna Oakey.
We're talking about brand protection issues before selling. And in order to talk informatively about this, I have brought back our specialist resident trademarks expert, Grace Yee from Aspect Legal. Hi, Grace. Thanks for coming back.
Hi, Joe.
This is a quick tip session, so we're going to try and give this information as quickly as we possibly can. But what's the issues here? What's the brand protection issues before selling and why are we talking about it?
Yeah, so Joe, we're talking about this because sometimes we see clients who are getting ready to sell their business, or even on the other end, we've got a buyer who's looking to buy a business, and lo and behold, the business doesn't have its brand protected.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, and I guess the real issue with that, you know, from a buyer's perspective, they're really looking to capitalise on the value of the assets, the business that they're buying, or the shares of the company, however they're purchasing it. And, you know, a failure to have the brand protected means really that the value in that asset is not protected, you know, so therefore there's risk for a buyer coming in. So if for a seller, the real risk is that, you know, they enter the due diligence process, and if brand is a valuable part of the assets of their business, then a buyer coming in realising that there's no protection, either A, might think, of course, they can, once they buy the business, they can do it themselves, but sometimes can be a lot harder for them than for the older owner. Can't it, Grace? Because, you know,
yes.
Sometimes, you know, maybe let's talk a bit about why it could be harder for them and why it's a good idea to do this before sale.
Yep. So the knowledge that the seller has, who if they're the ones that have been using the mark since the beginning of the business, that knowledge is extremely valuable if we go to apply for the trademark and it faces issues, and we're in a situation where we need to provide IP Australia with proof of the way that the mark has been used over the course of its lifetime. So obviously you need to have some contractual obligations there for the seller after the completion date of the business sale to help you provide that evidence, because you might not have access to it otherwise.
Absolutely. So, of course, it's just easier in this environment for a buyer to see that this issue has been ticked off, that the brand or the relevant brands, you know, quite often an organisation may have a number of different brands that they use for different things, that all of the brands have been properly protected by trademark registrations. So I guess what's the issues then if we leave it too late, Grace? What's some of the things you've seen?
Yeah, so people might not be aware that the trademark registration process actually takes a minimum of 7.5 months. Clients always get quite startled when they hear that, because obviously business names and company name registrations are so quick. But this process has to take a minimum of 7.5 months. And of course, if you start this at the time that the business contracts are being looked at, it might be a case of the business changing hands before the trademark's gotten through.
Yeah, and it's just a bad look. I think it's a bad look, you know.
It does look bad, doesn't it?
Yeah. So I just think this is absolutely one of those areas where it's just really important to get in early. And, you know, we say again and again that businesses need to prepare well in advance for a sale if they want to really maximise the sale price and the ease of the process. But this intellectual property and trademark registrations are really one of these areas that are very simple to tick off if you get in early enough, but one of these areas that you really need to be thinking about it at least a year before sale, and probably even earlier than that, because the longer a business has been using a mark, Grace, the more difficulty we often find getting in on the trademarks register because other people have quite often gotten in first, right?
Oh, gosh, imagine the situation where you're looking to sell your business and then you find out that your brand is actually infringing on somebody else's brand. That would be a nightmare.
Well, look, and we've seen this a few times in the past. I remember this case we had years ago, Grace, where an organisation had used their brand for 40 years. Now, I don't want to talk about the brand because, I don't want to embarrass the people who are involved, but it was an awesome brand and it had been used for 40 years. But when it came to the point of selling the business, the business owner was told by the prospective buyers, and I say prospective buyers because they actually fell out of the process once this was identified. But the prospective buyers identified that another business only 1 year ago had registered that trademark. And, the relevance now for this business is that they would have to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars in now getting that other mark off the register, even though they used that mark 40 years earlier. They can't sell a business with monopoly rights over great names anymore.
Yes. What a shame. And I think I know which brand you're thinking of. It's heartbreaking because I guess if you have been in business for 40 years, you're looking to sell your business and maybe put your feet up.
Yeah, that's right.
And you don't have the resources at that point to really fight this sort of battle.
Yeah.
So it was a case of lack of understanding that the trademarks register really is first in, best dressed.
Yeah, absolutely. And lack of understanding about the critical importance. Trademark registration is actually one of the cheapest types of IP protections you can get for your business. We call it the cheapest insurance you can get for your business. But it really is key getting in early enough, I think. Good. All right. Well, look, thanks so much, Grace, for joining us in this Quick Tips episode. I guess the takeaway here is if you are a business that's looking to build itself for sale, or if indeed you advise businesses in this area, certainly look out at the IP issues, like, for example, brand protection, well in advance of putting a business on the market. And, of course, if you're buying a business, then make sure intellectual property is part of the key areas of due diligence, if indeed IP is part of the value that you're expecting to get in the purchase. Well, thanks so much for your time, Grace. If people want to speak to Grace, you can get in touch with her and our other specialist legal eagles from Aspect Legal via our podcast website at thedealroompodcast.com or go straight to our website at aspectlegal.com.au, and there you can book yourself in a time to have a quick, free, no obligation discussion with Grace or any of our other very talented team there. And I just wanted to say a big thank you to you for listening in once again to the Deal Room podcast. If you like what you hear and you haven't subscribed, just go to your favourite player and hit subscribe. And if you really liked what you heard today, then why don't you leave us a review in iTunes? Anyway, I hope to see you in our next episode. Thanks again for listening in. You've been listening to Joanna Oakey and Grace Yee on the Deal Room podcast, brought to you by our commercial legal practice, Aspect Legal. See you next time.
Ladies and gentlemen.
That will conclude this evening's entertainment.
Thanks for listening to the Deal Room podcast. To find out more about this episode and other episodes in the series, check out the show notes or head over to our website at thedealroompodcast.com.au.